she's a familiar and a well-kept face, as we say. Although on your bio, Kate, you might say your own description of the naughty doctor in Scotland's own River City. Where? You're an activist for over 40 years. You've been in everything, theatre, TV, film, and radio. And you've got one of those faces you go, when you see you, it's like, this will be good, because she's good. I like her. Brilliant. And so, comrades, I give you now Kate Rutter, actor and activist. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, on this May Day where we're celebrating workers of the world, I'd like to first of all pay tribute to all key workers, in particular to Black and minority ethnic workers who've had such a disproportionate death toll. And I'd like to support the demand for an independent inquiry into that. That absolutely has to happen. I mean, we're all well aware that this virus does not discriminate, but our society certainly does, along racial, social and class lines. As Susan mentioned in her introduction, I am an actor, and I hope you have seen I, Daniel Blake, in which I play the only sympathetic DWP officer. Ken Loach's film blew wide open the inhuman UK benefit system. And when you think about it now, you know, what on earth is happening to the vulnerable people who were suffering before under that system? What is happening to those people in the current crisis? Well, this government doesn't actually care. When this incompetent Westminster government lets slip its agenda of trying to create herd immunity, they laid bare an entire belief system. I mean, for them, it seems there are two types of people, those who matter and those who matter less. We were told that the virus would only cause a minor problem as it was only affect the old, the vulnerable, and people with underlying health conditions. Oh, so that's okay then, is it? Mm. And that little word only, I think, was so revealing. Let me just switch to that. We now know that the scientific advice they say they're following is being influenced by Johnson's advisor, Dominic Cummings, a man whose eugenic beliefs are well known. This herd immunity approach, it runs counter to most other countries in the world, except perhaps Sweden, where it's already unraveling with the horrendous figures they're having of deaths in care homes. The USA, whose death toll is already the worst in the world. And of course, we in Britain are right on course to have the worst death toll in Europe. And this is a choice. It's not an accident, it's an ideological choice they're taking here, because this government is focused on the market above all else. Now, the market, as has been said already, has completely failed frontline workers. It's failed to provide PPE, it's failed to test and trace, and it's failed the NHS because one of the many lessons COVID has already taught is that privatisation costs lives, no doubt about that. In fact, I can't think of any area where the market has provided anything but grief and misery, which is particularly coming to light during this crisis. And of course, in terms of this conference originally being organised about climate change, I'd just like to add that the same Tory party now telling us they're relying on scientific advice is the same bunch that's done everything it possibly can over the years to ignore and discredit scientific advice on climate change. And people are saying at least this world lockdown may slow down climate change. And of course it is, as Mary said, a little breather. It's a tiny breather, but the most recent evidence is suggesting it may have actually the opposite effect in the long term, because it's also slowing down the move away from fossil fuels. It's slowing down the manufacture of electric cars, etc., etc., etc. So it may, although it's a temporary pause, and of course when production starts up again, it may ramp up very, very quickly in order to try and regain ground that the big capitalists have lost during this pandemic. So when it's over, as has been said already, it's going to be so important not to allow the government to go back to business as usual. So how do we organise? How how do we prevent the government going back to business as usual? I mean, what do I know? I'm only an actor. I don't apparently even have the right to express an opinion, which was made very clear to me when I applied to go on into the audience on question time during the general election campaign in December. I applied like everybody else. I got on there like everybody else. I asked a question to Joe Swinson about, I took her to task about why the Lib Dems had colluded with the Tories in imposing inhuman benefit cuts. And for this, I was attacked by Twitter, trolled on Twitter, all that, attacked by the Daily Mail and the Sun, which of course I wear as a huge badge of honour to this day. I mean, you know, actors are entitled to opinion. It's true, actors are not frontline workers, but you know, we are what that exhausted nurse turns on to relax to at the end of a traumatic shift. And I think this lockdown has shown that art matters to people in many ways. And of course, artists can contribute politically as well. Films like I, Daniel Blake, Sorry We Missed You, which reveals what's happening in the 0 hours economy so beautifully and so shockingly. Films like Mike Leigh's Peterloo, which can bring our important history to life, those events that aren't taught in schools and should be. You know, art has a role to play. When the virus struck, I was working at Sheffield Crucible Theatre in a production of Coriolanus, Shakespeare's Coriolanus, which I'm sure many of you will know, is about a leader who loses power because of his bloated egotism and contempt for ordinary people. Well, clearly a play for today. But that show had to close early with massive losses to that theatre. That is unfortunately going to be the general picture when all this is over, that the whole cultural industry sector is going to be decimated. And the government isn't even offering to prop that up in any way. They're offering to prop up big business, sure. They'll prop up the Richard Bransons of this world, but they won't prop up a small company. They won't prop up a theatre. They'll offer loans, which are no good to anybody. And so, you know, if we're not going to lose all those the cultural side of our lives, which is so important to keep us going, then we need to fight. And the fight in my sector is just part of a united fight back we need to be building now. I mean, first and foremost, as has already been said, we have to keep up the pressure for PPE and effective testing and tracing to keep workers safe. Every Thursday when we go out into the street, we don't just clap, we rage. And we're starting to rage in our street, and that rage is starting to spread. We chant and we rage. We don't just stand there politely clapping anymore. And I think there's a feeling of change in the air that people are just not having this anymore. They're just not having it. And we need to resist any relaxation of lockdown until it's safe. This is such a class issue because the people that this government wants to send back to work, generally speaking, are the low paid who will be even more at risk, the people they want to prop up the economy. Whereas a lot of middle class people can work at home, no problem. They'll be in less danger. So everything in this whole COVID crisis comes down to class terms all the way along the line. When this is over, we must demand an end to poverty wages and 0 hours contracts and a humane benefits system. We need to demand an immediate amnesty for all people threatened with deportation and for indefinite leave to remain for migrant workers, many of whom have paid the price in this crisis and have proved themselves to be absolutely invaluable. We need to campaign for an end to privatisation across the public sector and to bring care workers back into the NHS paid proper money. And most importantly, this government must be held to account for the thousands and thousands and thousands of avoidable, unnecessary deaths. It's as if they're turning care homes into killing fields. We cannot allow them to get away with this. It's appalling. Finally, on May Day, I would have to admit that in my long life, these are the darkest times I've ever lived through, without a doubt. And sometimes I think we all get overwhelmed. It's so important on this day and all the days that follow that we look after each other, that we treasure each other, and that we hold on fiercely to our values of love and solidarity with all working people of the world. Yes, these are hard times, but I believe out of them will come grief and rage. And out of that, we can work to build a just and equal society. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate. Thank you.